Well, and it's just I think that, I often say on the podcast, actually one of the most common sayings that I have on here is that I'm not here for influence. I don't wanna be an influencer. I wanna be here for impact. I wanna help people become the person that they should be and be authentic, right? Like, and so it's interesting because I pick a word every single year. And every time I pick a word, everything that I do when I'm feeling frustrated or stuck or whatever, I just funnel everything to that word. And if it doesn't align, then maybe it's not for that year, right? And welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the Unbreakable Podcast Network. I am your host, Kate D'Annunzio, and today I have this wonderful human with me, Mr. Tybo. How are you?
Great, great. How are you?
I'm great. I think you're great too. That's just me, though.
Thanks.
So, Ty, you have a very interesting story. You have one of you actually have a fascinating story to me, just in terms of your come up and where you've gone in your life. Some of the things that you've bounced back from. You're a family man. You're a bodybuilder. You're a big loser. You've lost a bunch of weight. You've overcome a ton of stuff. So, why don't we just get started and you can tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. Give us some backstory.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, first and foremost, I always let people know that, since 2013, 9/11, actually, I didn't choose that, but 9/11. Yeah. So ever since then, I've tried to live in my life. I've tried to make as many connections with people as possible. During that time, created a family. I have a wife and two kids. During that time, went through a lot. You mentioned like the weight loss and everything. I started getting happy, started eating more, and I got to upwards of what 315 pounds.
Jeez.
That if you moved to coach, got down to 173, having about 200 trying to build. I worked in the recovery field, been a counselor since 2014. Yeah, just graduated from my master's last June. Last month, and working on an internship to be a mental health counselor.
Incredible, incredible. Congratulations. You have had a pretty good run over the past decade, let's say. So let me ask you a pretty personal question. And I'll look to you to kind of meter me if I'm out of line here. But what was your rock bottom? Why did you jump into recovery? What made it change for you?
Yeah, um, I actually kept this story a secret a lot, but I was just embarrassed, but I'm not at all anymore. My rock bottom was I was committing a certain crime over and over, and I got a phone call, and the phone call was, they don't think that you did this crime. It was Yeah, they don't think you did this crime. It was stolen, but didn't want. They just want to talk to you. I said, "Okay." For a long time, just had a lot of guilt about what I was doing, and I said, I can't face these people. And honestly, what I did is I walked inside the sheriff's office. I told them all the crimes I committed over the past month, and they were shocked. Like they didn't know what to do. They'd never seen that before. And I've always been raised with kind of accountability, and that was my way of doing that. I couldn't stop using at by myself, and I needed help. And I honestly thought I belonged in prison, and they let me go. They just let me go, and I had this standing appointment with the sheriff where I call him every day. Oh, sorry, every week. I call him every week, and you know, uh, just tell him more. And he goes, I don't think you're a criminal. I think you're a drug addict. Long story short, I got arrested for felonies, a lot of different things. And then uh, I got drug court. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So I ended up getting drug court, and that provided me the accountability that I needed. The victim was paid back everything. It was all monetary. It's money. I think I forgot everything.
Wow. That's I the fact that, like, you were still feeling, like, elements of guilt, I mean, like, addiction can drive some really erratic, crazy, abnormal behavior. So, talk to me a little bit about, when you started using drugs. What was it that was drawing you into that world, and how did it become kind of the continuation of what led you down this path?
Yeah. Um, yeah, so I think I started using when I was about 12 or 13. And really what it was is I had just a wide variety of friends. And the ones that were positive influences for me left. And when they left, I just kind of latched on to different people. Um, those are great people. I still talk with them all the time. We were just using drugs, you know? It was my way of trying to feel connected. It was my way of trying to feel. I've always had this thing where it's easily forgotten. That comes from, and so I found that through drugs. Like if I could bring drugs, if I could, like, I had something that you want. It just evolved over time. Huge turning point for me was when I was using drugs. So at first I was using drugs to feel good, but when I used to numb a pain, I realized it at the
Yeah,
time. That is when it just flipped.
yeah. Yeah. It is insane how, a paternal or a maternal wound can lead you down a path that is so dark. That is something that you would never like, as a parent, when you look back into that, like, knowing that harm that you felt and those things that you did to close that gap, does that impact you in terms of how you show up as a father?
Percent. Yeah, I'm afraid for my kids, especially with what's around now. But at the same time, bit because I can't control them all the time. I'm just trying to be a good time. And I tell my kids I love them all the time, and it's it's a weird dynamic.
I feel that. I feel that. It's one of those things I remember I was telling my daughter this weekend, and I tell her this story all the time. When I was 15, my dad said to me, "God," he said, "I hope you have a daughter just like you." And I said to him, "You know what? I hope I do too, because then I'll know what she's thinking when she's thinking it." And then she turned 14, and I phoned him and I said, "Why did you put that curse on me?" And he said, "But I thought you know
Yeah.
what she's thinking when she's thinking it." And I was like, "Yeah, I do. And that's why I'm so uncomfortable."
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
we can see it. We can see it, right? Because when you're using, relationships or food or alcohol or drugs to numb those pains, to fit in and find that belonging, right? We talk about it all the time here on the podcast. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is food, shelter, safety, and belonging. And, I talk to people about this all the time. One of the things that we see in terms of people getting out of jail or people leaving a recovery program where they don't have the proper supports afterwards is, you come out of a treatment program or you come out of jail and it's like, you don't have a place to go. John Howard Society's full. And it's like, okay, so there's no halfway house. There's nowhere for me to go. Guess who's always going to take me back? My drug dealer, you know?
Yeah, and that's a huge problem I think of it.
Yeah. So when you think about like the dial and you've turned it and you've come into this like amazing space in your life, I mean, you get up every single day to serve, right? Like you serve your family, you serve your community. Like the work that you do is so powerful. How do you bring those experiences into the work that you do as a counselor without 'cause I think there's a difference between empathizing and understanding where somebody is and almost being behaviorally complicit to them.
Generally.
So what I'd ask was how do you take your previous year's experience of life and apply it to your clients without kind of becoming in it with them. Like, because there's, you think about it, if you're sitting on the side of a pool and someone's drowning and you throw them a ring, you're not going to jump into shark infested water with some people, but you want to help get them out of that shark infested water. How do you do that? How do you find that balance?
Oh man, yeah. So, oh, that's such a good question. That's hard, right? Like
Hmm.
that's really hard. So like with children, like teens that are using it, I just want to, hug them. I just want to like tell them like you're loved, you're cared about, like all of this stuff, like you make it through, will be okay. As far as, like the adults that I serve, you know, I have to have this fine line, and it's a common saying in recovery, right? And that is
Oh.
so hard, especially
Hmm.
if like the parents listen, because I want to tell them from my experience that like your children need you like that. know? And I I I do, right? Like I do tell them that, but at the same time I can't just force them to make this decision, I mentioned rock bottom to choose that, you know. And also, just like a side note, a lot of people judge their love values. They're like, "Oh, I'm a high bottom." Like, what does that mean? Like, that's your bottom, you
Yeah.
know. Um,
So you have a very interesting opportunity to influence kind of the next generation by the sounds of it. So let's take this and switch gears, because I think you and I have a very similar mindset in terms of bodybuilding. Bodybuilding, for me, I know it saved my life. Like, it gave me something to lean in on. It gave me something to improve myself. It gave me a structure to live in. Like you said, okay, you were upwards of 315 pounds when you came out of treatment and you got happy. We call that fappy in my world, fat happy. So, so you got fappy and you one day looked in the mirror and you were like, oh my God, WTF. Like, I don't know. I saw a picture of myself,
yeah,
Ty, and I saw a picture of myself at 200 and whatever, 60 pounds. And I was like, is that uncooked bread in my pants? I'm running around with a bunch of uncooked bread in my pants. And I was wearing a black tank top. I thought nobody could see it.
yeah. I remember walking by and I looked at the mirror and I'm like, I don't even recognize this. This is crazy, because I'd never been that big,
Right.
but also too, I was using for so long. We typically don't, and so it was wild, you know? Um, yeah, and I was getting like covered in tattoos, but I was getting a tattoo, and I was in Seattle, it's a couple hours away, and to my girlfriend called, and we laugh at this now, right? But I swear to this day, she calls and she goes, "The way you eat is disgusting." Right? And she tells me though, she goes, "That's not what I said. I said the way you eat's unhealthy." I heard disgusting. And so what I ended up doing is I got off the phone and I cried as I'm going through a drive. And I'm ordering. I'm like, and I just want two cheeseburgers and three, and then yeah, and then a couple days after that, we got a gym member.
And that was it.
Yeah, yeah. I was so afraid. I was so afraid. I remember that first day, I didn't want to treadmill, and I didn't want to do anything else. Like I was on the treadmill for 20 minutes, and it was like I felt so out of place. But
Yeah.
everything you
You,
said after that, totally.
Totally. And it's interesting because like when I first started, I went and I crashed. Like I was just like, okay, well, that's it. You're fat. You're not going to be anything in your life and you're going to die before your child graduates high school. That was honestly my first response was I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. And that really scared me because one of the things like for me is that as a parent, I wanted to be everything my mother wasn't. Whether or not that's a good driver to being a good parent, whatever. It's my choice. And so I went and I crashed my calories to 1,200 and I was like, that's it. We're going to off to the races. But what was interesting, I was working for the government at the time with the Department of Justice, and they allowed me to take what they called healthy lunch under our collective bargaining agreement, which was combining my 2 breaks and my lunch hour together. And so I would go to the gym. I could literally, Ty, only do like, what was it, 15 minutes on the elliptical and then stretch because I was so out of shape that there was no option for anything else. Like, it was crazy how out of shape I was.
Yeah, yeah, and after that 20 minutes, I was sweating, and
Oh,
I couldn't tell you how much longer after I started. I remember trying to I just couldn't do it. The most I was able to do was just walk.
yeah.
The consistency the
Mhm.
consistency was what.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, like, I don't know about you, but I was terrified of the weight room. Like, the gym that I went to, it had, like, all the cardio was upstairs, and then the gym, like, the iron was all downstairs, and then they had, like, classes, so they had, like, a studio. So, once I gained a little bit of fitness, what I would do is I would go and I would do, like, 5 AM spin classes so nobody would see me, or, like, an aerobics class where nobody would see me, and then, the guy who owned the gym, his name's Mike, and he still owns the gym, or he still works there. Um, and he challenged me. He said to me, "You need to get into the weight room. You're not going to have the health and physique that you want and like the long-term benefits of what you're trying to achieve if you don't go and pick up a weight." And I said to him, "I don't want to. Like, it's so scary in there. Like, all these beautiful fit bodies that have, in my mind, had never gone through trauma, had never been fat, had never experienced, you know what I mean? Like, we make up stories, we create our own internal bias. And he said to me, "Okay, well, why don't I take you in there and I'll train you?" And I was like, at the time I was a single mom, and I was like, well, I can't really afford that. And so what they did was they gave me a free membership for working in the daycare for 3 hours on a Saturday morning. And he was like, "It's included in your membership. You get that as a part of." I'm like, "You do not give free training to members. Like, you're a fucking liar." And so I went and he took me down there and he trained me. And I will never forget how empowered and how just I left that day feeling more beautiful than I had felt in a very, very long time. And it was interesting because I went home for the first time in 11 years, and like we're talking like far north, like right by Alaska is where I'm from. And I went home for the first time in like 11 years, and I went back to that gym and I got my membership for like the week that I was there, and nothing, like literally nothing had changed in the gym, which I was like, that's weird, wild. And he was there, and I said to him, I was like, "Mike, do you remember me?" And he goes, "Of course I remember you." And I said, "Mike, you changed my life. Your investment in me." And so I actually have a picture of him and I together. And honest to God, Ty, the man looks exactly the same. He still wears his little like wife beater and it's like better body shirt. And then he has like the colored like little Zubaz pants. He still wears them. And they're not like the new ones that Better Bodies is making now. Right. But yeah, so I mean, it's so think about the people who have kind of lifted you up along the way, the people who they saw you and they put that hand down and they said, you know, "Listen, you can do this. You're not just somebody worth walking by." Like, what did those people do? Who were those people for you?
Yeah, so, couldn't tell you how long it was, but I remember just going to cardio, but I really wanted to lift weights,
Mm,
and I was really self-conscious about how strong or weak I really was. And what I used to do this thing because just like you said, the weights, the actual big weights are in another part of the gym. And what I used to do is I used to walk over and I would act like I'm going to go lift weights. And I'd look in there and I would turn around and I
yeah,
would go back to the cardio, I had a buddy, great buddy of mine for years. His name is Kelly. I was sitting there, I was telling Kelly, dude, like, you've been doing this a long time. How did you get the bravery to just start lifting? He said, everybody just wants to share the pain. They don't care, and we've been close for a long time, but he tells me, he's like, dude, you're not that cool. No, nobody's watching you and staring at you and saying, oh, he's lifting weights now. They just want you to join. and that's really what the community's all been about. And that's what I love to do too when I see people.
Yes,
I
me
see a new
too.
person. Like I love to smile, I love to wave. It's nice to meet you. My name is Ty, and then like later on, like, they'll show me pictures, and I'm like, wow, like you look amazing. And it's cool too to see people's transformations
Yeah.
as it progressed. Um, so I think Kelly was a big influence for me to start lifting. And then the person that really helped me take it to the next level is Scott.
Yeah, he's wonderful, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah, and I was just watching his podcast, and that's really all it was, and I reached out and said, "Dude, I need help. I don't know what to do." And I've been working with him for the past, like, 4 years, and
Yeah.
so Scott and Kat.
Yeah, the 18-minute voice note on how to improve your lateral raise, right? I mean, McNally's one of the most detailed people I've ever met. He's wonderful. He's well, and that Think Big crew is like, I mean, I don't know, like we've had an infiltration once or twice of, a couple knobs that get on the Facebook page and whatever. But I mean, like for the most part, the group that's there is really rock solid. Like, I mean, some of my very well, my absolute best friend, obviously, somebody you know very well, Mr. Matt Marshall. We love Matt. He's next level, but he's also a McNally guy, and I think he's the guy who's been with McNally the longest. Like, I think he's been with McNally for over 10 years now, I think, or around that time frame, right?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's great. I mean, you asked who helped me start, like, who's helped me continue, like, Matt is one of them, and there's a couple other guys from that group that are great, my posing coach, Devin, buddy of mine, Jeremy, in that group, just amazing people, and then honestly, that's how I found you. You were on the podcast. I'm like, who is this? And the way that you talk, it was so relatable and it was real. Like that is what drives me to really want to get to know you. And I mean you as in anybody, like you directly too. How authentic, like if everything's always good, why do you hide? Right?
Right.
So,
Well, and I think that's
if we cover you can't save your face and be butt at the same time.
bingo, bingo, and that's the thing though, is that, like, we talk about that on the podcast a lot of the time, and I think we actually had a post that went this week that is, comparison is the thief of joy. I say it all the time, and it is just so absolutely true, and in this industry, it always interests me how petty people can get about the stupidest shit, and how critical they can be, and the things that they focus their attention on. It's just, like, the gossip and, oh, this guy posted AI and this guy did this and I have an opinion on that. And it's like, you know what? Nobody actually cares. Like, this is a flash in the pan. Like, you're not changing anybody's life. Like this, that Goob guy on Instagram. I completely stopped following him because I was like, he's toxic. He's toxic as shit. And everybody just buys into it because they're like, well, he's exposing fitness influencers. Listen, if you are going to be following somebody on the internet and they are going to shape your personal validation, how you feel as a person because of how snatched their waist is, you have some more significant issues to work on than, you know, than you realize. Because it's like
Of
people
course.
give themselves to these personalities, and it's just like you being highlighted on somebody's page because you sent them something to rip on and bully on the internet. Like, come on, don't you have something else with your time? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, there's a local guy, I'm not gonna name names. I honestly don't even know what it is, but there was a local guy that I was following just because when I go to shows, I'm like, "Follow, follow, follow, it's got you," whatever.
totally,
And I see that, and I'm like, I can't. I just can't anymore with this person."
no,
Anybody that's willing to put somebody else down for their own benefit, I don't wanna be around.
yeah. Well, and it's just I think that, I often say on the podcast, actually one of the most common sayings that I have on here is that I'm not here for influence. I don't want to be an influencer. I want to be here for impact. I want to help people become the person that they should be and be authentic, right? Like, and so it's interesting because I pick a word every single year. And every time I pick a word, everything that I do when I'm feeling frustrated or stuck or whatever, I just funnel everything to that word. And if it doesn't align, then maybe it's not for that year, right? And so the year 2023, I picked the word unapologetic. Whew. Ty, that year was bananas. Like it was crazy. Cause you know what? I just didn't give up. I was out there and I was just doing whatever I wanted. And it was like, if you think that this is kind of cringe, go ahead. Think it's cringe. I don't give a shit. If, like I did 3 competitions that year and I won 5 overalls. Like I died. Oh my God. My daughter, actually, we were talking about it last night. My daughter said to me, she goes, in all the years that you have been bodybuilding, she said, that was the only time I was really concerned about you. Because she goes, the night before, like, because I was so dehydrated, all of the fat was out of my cheeks and it was all hollow. She said, she's like, your face was so scary to me, mom. And she goes, we're 3 years removed. I can actually be honest about that. And I said, well, I mean, I understand, but she goes, I hope you never go there again. And I was like, well, I can't guarantee that I won't. But when I went through that, like I went through the year and it was just like, I did everything that I wanted to do. I presented this physique that I was super proud of, the best I've ever looked on stage. Matt and I did a competition together that year and we were able to have some fun out in Little Rock, and I did the Rising Phoenix amateur show, and I was like, I wasn't standing on stage by myself, which was really cool. Like, and I met some really, really other great competitors in that space. I did a show in Saskatoon, in Saskatchewan, and but what was really cool is I did all of my shows in the month of September, which was my dad's birthday month, and I did all of my posing routines to Dr. Hook, cover of the Rolling Stone. Absolutely deadly. Unapologetic. That was the year that changed my life, I think. Like, it was like, I say everything changed my life. That was a turning point for me, and, you know, I think about how bodybuilding serves me on a daily basis and how, you look at it and hey, just so you know, the audiobook is done. We're gonna have it out pretty quick here. Yeah, you're
Yes.
gonna be able to soak it in. But I talk a lot about like neuroplasticity and what bodybuilding can do in terms of that repetition and that self-love and that investment of time. Like, I mean, you must feel the benefits of all of that in terms of your recovery and how it keeps you kind of on the straight and narrow. It gives you something to really focus on.
Yeah, yeah. So, my mind is always gone, right? I have, ADHD, I have anxiety, depression, right? But my mind's always going. And one thing that like I love what Matt said when he was on the podcast is when I'm in the gym, that's the only time that I'm present, right?
Yeah.
And I feel that. And so when I'm in the gym, there is a certain system. There's a certain way that I do things. There's a certain feeling that I'm looking for. And, I just made a post about this today, but it's like when your body is telling you that when you're in a rep, or in a set, and your body is telling you to drop the weight, or your body's telling you this is too hard, this is too much, but your mind is elsewhere. Just go, just push, just do it. It brings this certain character out of you that transfers to everyday life. So being a parent, right? Us being parents, there's been times in my life where like I look at my kids and my kids are chaotic, right? They're uncontrollable. They're bouncing off the walls. They're whatever, very stressful situations, whatever it may be. You know, else,
Yeah. That house
the
fire.
yes. And so when things happen, um, and life is chaotic, I go back to my mind and I say, what's the process, right? How can I get through this? And that's been one of the biggest takeaways with bodybuilding for me.
Yeah, it's giving you a different framework in terms of that mental focus. And it's interesting that you say that is, like yesterday I was in the gym, I was doing lower body day and I'm I'm dieting right now. I'm not competing, but I'm just stripping down so that I can push back up for another, 8 or 10 months or whatever. And man, I hit a wall. I was doing unilateral, leg press and then I was on the hip thrust and I had, 8 plates on this bastard, and, I got 8, so I got a PR in the logbook, and that was great, and then I went to go do my back offset, and I, like, hit a massive, massive wall, and it was just like I was like, "Just focus, just focus." The body is going, "No, no, we don't wanna do this. This is terrible. What are you" like, my hams and my glutes were just screaming at me, and then it was just and then that moment of fatigue where it's just like the body is like, "No, fine, you can do whatever you want. The mind can do whatever it wants," and then the body just goes, "Nope," and that's it, right? And I love that. I love that. Like, and I still had to finish the workout, right? So you hit that wall and
Right.
you do, because we're not going to fail ourselves at this point. I'm not going to walk out and not do what I do because I say to myself, well, when you stand on that stage or when you do that next check in, did you actually do everything that you said you were going to do to get here? And if the answer is no, and the result turns out that you're not number one, you did that to yourself. It,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I hope to compete one day. I mean, that's the goal, but the check-in process, like, yes, it's, when I'm writing out that check-in, diet, did you stick to it? I'm like, so, the weeks where I'm like, yeah, I did. Everything's good, making whatever it is. That feeling, amongst the other stuff, it was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So listen, you alluded to it, and I think that this is something that listeners would love to hear, simply for the fact that, Ty, you are a mentally strong individual. But in December, early December of last year, you guys had a very unfortunate event, and you had a house fire where there were injuries to your children, to your daughter specifically, and you guys lost your home right before Christmas. Like, that is such a triggering event. Like, that's tragic. So, talk a little bit about that and how you, as, kind of the head of your household, working with your wife, how are you doing? I know we're on the come up again, aren't we?
Yes, yes, everything's good. Right now, we're just dealing with just ins and outs, just stuff, just permits and things. Um, yeah, yeah. So everything is fine now. Um, but yeah, so December 10th, I left to go to the gym, and it's just normal day. My daughter, was watching the movie, and she was cooking. And so I stop at the post office and I get a phone call that from my wife, and she goes, there's a fire, Bailey caught the kitchen on fire, and the kids are screaming. And so I if I want to be honest, my first initial thought, and I know it's fair, but my first initial thought was, I was pretty angry because I mentioned a couple times the oil next to the stove. It needs to move because sometimes the plastic melts. And it's like, and I see that, and so my initial thought was it was just like an accident, and then I immediately like I start driving, and I race home. I called 911, right, because the 911 hit. Called 911, and I was trying to get any information I could. And so I'm sitting there, and I got to my house as quickly as possible. We'll just leave it that way. And
Mhm.
so I pull up the driveway. And when I pull up the driveway, I see a fire truck, an ambulance, and a bunch of smoke coming out of the fire. And that's when it all hit me. Like all of the anger went away. And I realized how serious this was. And so I pull up, and I don't know. So I'm still not, I don't know who I talked to begin with, but I did somehow find out that my daughter was there. And so I remember going to my daughter. And she's my stepdaughter. I've known her since she was 2. And I walked outside of the ambulance, and they said her legs are burned. I can't tell you how bad it is right now. She was crying. Everybody's crying. It's the first time I really kissed her, and I said, "So, what? I love you. I'm just glad that you're safe." Go out, and I see my son, and he's holding a rabbit, and he's just what had happened is she was cooking, and I told her she was my hero. It got fire, and what she did is she tried to throw it outside, right, the oil outside. She didn't realize how much oil was on the ground, so she slipped, and all the oil.
Oh my
And
god.
so after that, what she ended up doing is she let the dogs out, and she got the smell out, you know, and the rep, and with her heart, right, with like everything going on, she goes, the goldfish, she's like, the goldfish, and I told her later on, after a couple of days, I said, the goldfish is gone. It's there's ash in it, in the water. There's no way that goldfish survived. Side note, I showed up there later and the goldfish wasn't alive. You
Oh my
know,
god.
so I told her to call it Ashy. I told her to call it Ashy, and she goes, no, 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 we're not doing it. Like, okay, okay, but yeah. So like, as the leader, right, or the call the it was so weird to have the community here and the bodybuilding community too. Like
Mhm.
reach out, like Scott called, Matt got a hold of me, Nick, Evan, like all of these people, in the community, they just
Yeah.
started either donating. I had a GoFundMe and started donating. We started like it was wild the amount of support that I got through that. And there's so much that goes with that I don't think people realize. Like couple days afterwards, I ended up going to the store, right? And this was a time like I was really beating myself up. And Scott's like, "It's okay. You don't have a kitchen. Like you can't. It's hard for you to stick to the diet."
Yeah.
And I remember getting a sandwich, and I'm sitting there in the car, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm just gonna take my sandwich home," and I drive on the. Oh, sorry, I get in the car and I'm like, I don't have. This is hard. I've been homeless before being a drug addict, but when I got a family, that was
Different story.
difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then just a side note, just because I love to shout people out that are great people.
Yeah. Please.
I was at the store, right? I'm sitting there and I have all these groceries, and this local person, Nessa, right? She comes up and she pays for all my groceries, and I sit there and she's like, everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be. She gave me a hug. I gave her a hug and I cried. And so I get up my groceries and I bring it out to the car. I break down. Like I'm talking like that real ugly cry,
Yeah.
taking this, everything.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I go like this. My whole body just like my head hits the steering wheel and
No.
my car goes brr, just big horn, and everybody in the parking lot's looking at me. I'm trying to have a moment, and I'm like, I just can't even have a moment alone.
You're like, "Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
I'm just grieving,
yeah,
I'm feeling joy, feeling all the
yeah.
things." Wow, wow. Yeah, so the community really came around you and, you in terms of your family, you guys you're rebuilding your home. You've had everything kind of go through. I'm sure you guys went through the melee of insurance. I mean, like, look, we're 8 months past the incident happening. You're in a good space now. When are you looking to have your home fixed up and back online for you guys?
Yeah, so best case scenario, September. We've
Wow,
purchased, we've ordered um, the home, and we are just in the process of just yeah, we're near the end. I'm
that's
excited.
exciting. That's exciting. What a great chapter for you to be able to kind of close. And, when you think about all of the different people who've interacted and supported you and come around you, I mean, it's just the community that you've built in your space of recovery. And the other thing that I would like to suggest, Ty, and just based off of my interactions with you, is that you are so open to receiving, right? Like you're not, and you're open to giving. Like you give your time to people. You give the opportunity for people to learn from you, to, receive help from you. But on the other hand of it, like you're open to receiving. And what I mean by that is like people come to you and they want to be in your social circle. They want you to be a part of their social network. And I think that is just it's such a compliment because when people are seeking you out, it just means that you're a high value person and you add to this world. And I'm just so grateful that our paths have crossed and that we have so many mutual connections because you're strong as fuck, man.
Thank you. Thank you. And that means the world to me. You know, I learned that from my two best friends, Josh and Joe.
Yeah,
They're like, it's like, let us help you, you know? Like you're worth every bit, you know? So thank you
amazing.
so much.
That's amazing. And it's hard. It's hard to ask for a hand up. It's hard to take a hand up. It's hard to lean on other people. And I think it is, in my opinion, it's like the ultimate gift that you can give other people is to receive what they're offering. So as we wind down, if you were to leave our listeners with one thought, one piece of what's the Thaiism that you would want to leave with them?
The the thing that I tell almost all my clients when they're about ready to graduate is peace. I don't care. I mean, I do, right? But essentially, I don't care what you do. I don't care how you go about your day and what you do. But I want you to be happy to have peace, you know. And from a recovery standpoint, I can't drink that. I can't, you know, I'm smoking. I can't. It comes from living a life that I'm proud of, you know, doing things that I'm proud of, and treating people in a way that makes me happy. Because trust me, when I'm an ass, I think about that. That's like one of my last thoughts throughout the night, and I like my sleep. You
Yes,
know, so if I think about that, you know, I know that I should change it, you know, and apologize, you know. So just peace. Find the peace, whatever that looks like for you. Just do.
wonderful. That's great advice. That's great advice. I always say my peace isn't for sale. My harmony is the most important thing in my life. And so the hills I'm willing to die on are very few and far between.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't argue with people on the internet, Ty.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. As you continue down this journey, would love to have you back as you digest this experience. I know you've not really done podcasting before, so really, really grateful for you to, express that vulnerability and, join me today and give us the gift of being your first.
Ma'am, thank you. It's an honor. I appreciate you guys, and thank you.
Yes, you're so welcome. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. If you want to get in touch with Ty, we're going to drop his socials in the show notes below. Remember, protect your peace, chase your dreams, and stay unbreakable.